Hello, it's Atomic Facepalm. This is Chris.
And I'm Bree.
And this week on Played in Full, we review Darkest Dungeon. Bree, what did you think of the game that ripped the heart out of my chest tonight and threw it in a wastebasket and took a dump in that wastebasket and then threw it in the landfill somewhere?
I love this game. As hard as it can be, I actually do really like this game. It's a fun game.
Yeah.
But heartbreaking. As you can tell, somebody's just had their heart broken 5 minutes ago by this game.
So a little bit of backstory here. Well, not much of a backstory because it literally was like 10, 15 minutes ago. I just got done playing a boss battle, and I think maybe we just start off this review with the stress dynamic, because I think that figures in very well.
Let's maybe start the basics.
I think the stress is in the basics. The proof is in the pudding! It starts so bad. So it's a basic RPG in the sense that you level up your characters. There's a bunch of different character types. Each character has skill sets. Their layout in the party structure matters. There's 4 heroes, if you want to call them heroes. There's 4 people per party. You can have multiple parties. The idea is your ancestor committed some terrible act. He was really rich and he couldn't get enough of life, so he decided to dig up this terrible thing in the bottom of his mansion. Turned out that was a bad idea, and he released all sorts of like Lovecraftian horrors upon the world. That's kind of the backstory. Big shout out, by the way, to the narrator. He's kind of a big part of this game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So A+ on you, guy I didn't look up the name to, which is a theme for me, apparently.
I'll insert it later.
So, getting to the stress dynamic, because it's ever present right now, believe me. So in this game, not only do your characters have hit points, there's no magic points or anything to speak of. You each have a certain set of skills, but stress is one of the biggest factors. Stress and sort of gradually going insane.
So your characters each have a stress bar. Like they have a health bar, they have a stress bar as well, and that, it's getting added to constantly as they go through the dungeon. So the game in general it's pretty difficult, and there's a big steep learning curve.
Yeah.
It's one of those games where I'd suggest going and reading a wiki first.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, a friend of mine, Evan from PC Gamer, heavily recommended that, and at first I kind of was like, that's probably optional. I don't know if it's optional. I think it's actually kind of required to go after the wiki or a strategy guide, which is perfectly okay by me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't spoil it. This isn't a spoilers kind of game. No. You really definitely want to look into a knowledge base and understand the basic mechanics. I mean, you can do it on your own, but you're just going to lose a lot of guys. The guides are never ending.
And your heart, you're going to lose that too. It's down here.
Yeah. So you have 4 people that you can take out in your party, but you constantly can recruit new people, so they are expendable. So my first couple missions, I didn't read a wiki, and I lost quite a few guys to stress, because they stress themselves out so much they have a heart attack
especially
and
early
die.
Levels. They the first few levels, like level 0 is technically, it's called resolve levels for some reason, I don't know why. But right when you start off, they're really susceptible to stress to the point where it's more damaging than hit points.
Yeah. So sometimes a monster will do a stress attack where it only hits the health bar for 1 or 2 points, and then the stress, for 20 points. And so your guy's freaking out, losing their mind. And when a guy becomes stressed, he then stresses out the rest of the party.
That's one of the things that can happen.
One of the things, or he could just stab himself in the face, or just not, hide in the back of the party. Anything that could happen to a stressful hero is basically what happens to these guys.
Something new actually happened to me during this horrible crushing boss battle, which I'll get into in painful detail soon. Which you're not liking it? You don't like it? It's bad. I'm so depressed. It's going to feed into the review like we're talking about. So what happens is there's a number of things like you said, but one thing I found is in this game, placement of your guys, your heroes, is critical because certain skills only work in certain spots. Those skills can then only target certain enemies in certain spots. So sometimes they can get all mixed up if your party gets surprised. What happened to me, I have one guy who just refused to move. And the boss was rearranging on my guy, so I had to try and get my damage dealer to the front line, and my other guy was so stressed out and paranoid, he's like, I'm not moving. Nope, sorry, not going to do it. It's like, come on, dude. I need to get my guy up there. Nope, wouldn't move, and he just started cutting himself. Neat trick. Yeah. So when you do get stressed out to roughly 50%, you basically have a level between 100 and 200. when you hit level 100, there is a small chance you can get a virtue, which is actually beneficial to the rest of the party.
Yeah, because they can actually be like, yes, let's do this. I'm super stressed out. Let's be
rare.
better. It is rare.
Very
I think
rare.
it's happened like 2 or 3 times where other times they're just, they're fearful or hateful or...
Arrogant or whatever negative trait you can think of.
Yeah.
So basically, different boss battles can happen, and some of them do have heavy stress attacks. Some of them have different ways of dealing with your party. Some are a war of attrition, and some are just you really have to kill them as fast as you can.
Yeah. Each boss, so there's the general just kind of going in and monsters, but then the bosses really are quite different. Like, I thought they were just going to be more of the same, cannon fodder, but no, each boss has been really quite different and interesting.
Yeah, and this is not a game that's really, you look at it and you go, oh, there's 4 areas you can explore. There's the Weld, there's the Ruins, there's the Cove, and there's the Warrens. And that's it. And you go, oh, that's pretty basic. And there is the darkest dungeon, but you can't get to there until you're really, really high level. Actually, like, you can't go in there. It doesn't let you. Mm-hmm. So you look at it and you go, oh, it's like 4 dungeons. Okay, maybe a couple of bosses here and there. But it's deceptive. It's a really, really deep game, and it lures you in, and all of a sudden, before you know it, there's a lot under the surface, which kind of fits in great with the Lovecraft theme, which is, reality is a thin layer, and underneath all that is insanity and terribleness and challenges, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and it is a pretty basic game. Like, I think within an hour, you've kind of got the basic idea. You've seen just about everything that's going to be offered.
Yeah.
As far as gameplay, everything like that. Story's very slim, but it's one of those games where I want to play it again and again. It's very addictive.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's hard to nail it down. What I would say is the combat is honed in to a razor sharp edge. They know exactly how to play with that balance between too challenging or not challenging enough. Mm-hmm. There are some exceptions to that. When you get into the late game and you guys start to level up too high, the difficulty level goes through the roof. But up to that point, you really never feel like it's too easy, but you never feel like it's too impossible.
No, it feels perfect. I'd say that if I had to use one word for this whole entire game, it would be polished.
Yeah.
Like, every little bit is very polished. The graphics, the interface, how everything interacts together feels good. It feels like sometimes there's balance between you and the other, who you're fighting, that is perfect almost.
And you'll see that in some games where maybe a developer focused on one particular part of the game, but maybe some other parts were ignored because of a time crunch or who knows what. This game doesn't feel that way. This was a Kickstarter game, weirdly enough, and it feels better than most AAA titles. I know it came out a while ago. There's probably been a few patches since, January of last year, I think it released. Yep. But no, I didn't experience any crashes, any glitches, any bugs. It worked. The only thing I had was in Steam Cloud. I messed up. That's not the game's fault.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, the graphics are very artistic. They're kind of hand-drawn, sort of...
comic booky a little bit because they're really thick edges, poster edges. So yeah, it's cool. I think it works for it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a different time period than most kind of...
Well, there's different time periods blended in. So you have, like, medieval times guys, you have a crusader, like a knight in armor, but then you have a highwayman who has a pistol.
Yeah.
So it's basically, I would say, from 600 AD up until, 1850 or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know Lovecraft that well. I will fully admit I've read basically nothing of his. I know the lore, so I don't know what time periods that goes over. Presumably most of these. Mm-hmm. So getting back into the detail part. So you have these 4 areas you can explore. There's different little parts you can do, and it kind of randomizes difficulty based off your levels. And then, like we were saying, when you get under the surface, you discover that when you go into a certain quest, they're all randomized and different. And as you go through the dungeon, there's little things you can interact with varying degrees, sometimes randomized there too. There's boss battles, there's room battles for treasure. A lot going on in each of these places.
Yeah, no, and it's basically a dungeon crawler. I mean, it's going to give you kind of an auto-generated dungeon each time, and you kind of go room to room, but somehow it really works. It's just, basic stuff, but it's a good game. It's one of those games where you can play it for like a half an hour, or you can play it for 4 hours, either or. It's good.
Yeah, your emotions will be tested, and I think, honestly, that's part of the game. I've heard from a lot of people, you really can't play. Some people can only do an hour or two at the most. I'm kind of one of those people. It just gets too much. So the idea is, you touched on it earlier, is the heroes are cannon fodder, basically, at least early on. They're expendable. They're currency. For me, that was hard to wrap my head around. I think that's why I was so kind of distraught when I first started this game. I was trying to save my guys all the time. You don't want to do that, right?
Yeah,
It's like you want to just send them out there, get treasure, but just kind of let them go afterwards. If they don't die, you just release them, which is always an option.
And I think one of the things the game does well is right from the beginning, it pops up a warning kind of telling you and setting that expectation. I mean, basically anybody that's reviewed this game has said the exact same thing. It's hard, and that's what's good about it. But I mean, right from the start, it tells you that, you know, how the auto saves all the time. You're not going to be able to load a previous save.
There's no quick saves.
But yeah, you're not going to be able to do any of that to like get a guy or undo a mistake. What you do is what you do, and death is real and it hurts real bad. But I think that also is what makes you like the game, is because you're very emotionally invested in the whole entire thing. So good and the bad.
It makes you feel like a general, because when you're a general, right, you want to win the war, but sometimes to do that you've got to lose a few battles maybe, and you've got to lose troops, and that's exactly what happens in this game. You start off and, you know, the low level guys, who cares, they're grunts, but then you start to get attached to some of the high level guys, and there are times where you have to kill them if you want to beat the boss. And I think the developer said in an interview somewhere, if your favorite character dies but 3 other ones live to beat a boss, that's a good sacrifice. Hard to wrap your head around, tough to get your heart around that too. But that's what this game is. It captures that element of stress not only in the game, but with you too, because you're stressed when you're doing it.
Definitely.
If you're not, man, you're a statue.
And definitely, I think one of the other things that's really strong about this game is there's so many different classes. I think it's 15 or 16
15 or 16 or something like that.
Different classes. They're all very unique. So as you're learning the game and learning the classes, you start to kind of fall in love with certain, you know, characters. So that makes it kind of hard. You know, like I definitely had a soft spot for my jester and my plague doctor. Like, if I lose them, I'm going to feel really sad. I know you get another plague doctor and you level them up, but you know, you name your characters and.
Yeah, you can customize them, you can change the colors. That's one small gripe I had, for me anyway, is since a lot of this is randomness. When I started out, you had healers, and I was like, what the crap? I don't have any healers. I can't do anything. And I didn't get the Vestal as the main healer. She's like a nun, and she does your main group heals. I didn't have any of that until maybe, I don't know, 30% into the game. And for me, that was tough, because you kind of need healers for some of these quests.
Yeah, I've tried to run a group without a healer, and even if I have one guy, you know, like kind of a character that can do a 1 or 2 heal, it's just about impossible. You make it about halfway through the dungeon, and they're just... And
again, if you're just going for treasure, that's fine. You can just bail them out, kill them, get rid of them. If you actually want to progress through the game, healers are critical.
Yeah.
So there is, I mean, really, I don't have too many complaints with it at all. We talked about maybe the end of it. This is a game that demands 80 to 100 hours, I would say roughly. I have not beat it, and I've put probably damn near 60, 70 hours into it.
Yeah. No, I think that would be my one complaint is, so when you're into the game, it'll give you, you know, as you beat the different bosses in the different little areas, you can see it's checking them off on a list. And I was like, oh, that's cool. How am I doing? And then I started to scroll down the list, and I'm scrolling, and I'm like, wow, I'm going to have to beat like 60 bosses before I even go into the darkest dungeon.
Yeah.
Which to me felt a little bit it feels a little daunting.
It is.
And I'm not sure that I ever will make it. Like, that's a lot of time invested, you know.
Yeah.
I like it, though.
No, it's good, and there's no game over. You can never get a game over.
Yep. So you can always just recruit a few more guys and keep going at it.
But it feels a lot like starting over. If you wipe your highest level party, you're basically starting a new game at that point.
I mean, you'll have your town. That's actually something we haven't talked about, is the town itself, the hamlet, has different buildings, and each of those buildings, you know, you can upgrade your characters, swap out their skills, give them better armor, heal them, de-stress them, whatever.
This all costs money and resources.
It does, and then upgrading each of those buildings costs money and resources as well, but, you know, once you have your blacksmith upgraded, you can give them much, you know, they can start out and
get a better weapon, better armor.
Yeah.
So basically you have, and there's also different items you can get called trinkets, and each trinket like in this game, nothing is ever straightforward in the sense of, oh, it's just going to buff you. Very rarely that happens. Usually it has this buff, but then it also has this negative. So you got to weigh that.
Yeah, it's like +5 protection, -1, speed or something.
And -1 speed is significant. In the battles, there's no set limit to who goes when. Each character and enemy has speed, but then it just kind of balances it out and sort of picks one. So if you guys have high speed, they'll probably go first, but not always.
Yeah.
So losing speed or losing dodge is massive. Getting back to the hamlet, though, so how it works is in between the quests, you go back to the hamlet, which is the little village area, which you can upgrade all the stuff, get more heroes, get better equipped heroes, etc. So basically, you're just going back and forth. Quest, hamlet. But again, it's awesome. I don't know why. It's very repetitive, but it's great.
Yeah, no, it is. As soon as it's that one more turn kind of game where I get back to the hamlet, and to me, I want to go back out to the dungeon. I want to sell all my stuff and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And it's very simple, refined, but somehow I can't, want to keep playing.
It's tough. A lot of games try that and don't pull it off. In fact, you can fail pretty hard.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the combat down where it's not that fun, if there's not enough variations in the enemy or each area, you'd be like, oh, I'm done with this. Stupid. They don't have that problem, and I wouldn't even say they have a ton of enemies. There's maybe a dozen or so per area. Eventually, they do start recycling bosses. They rename them and make it tougher. But again, it's still fun. I don't know if I really have too many other complaints. It really is a great game. That said, I don't know if I would say it's the perfect game for everybody necessarily.
No, I mean, well, that's every game. You're not going to find too many games that are going to be.
There are some games I would recommend to everybody, like a game like Civilization. I feel like pretty much anyone except the biggest, jockiest, douchebaggiest like FPS player. I'm an FPS player too, so I'll want myself in there. Would enjoy something like that. There are certain puzzle games. I feel like there are certain games everybody can come together and play, no matter what. Maybe even to a certain degree. I don't feel like this is one of those games.
Really?
I don't. No, I think this is really geared more towards very hardcore players. It did release on PlayStation 4, is that right? It's not just a PC game. It did come out in the consoles too, one of them, I believe.
Okay.
But again, I don't think this is something that a casual player would go into and be like, this is fun. They'd probably be like, this is just so stressful and terrible. Why would anyone enjoy this? Where people like us, we love it. But
I feel like I'm going to disagree a little bit. I feel like people are moving away from that. I think that, like with Dark Souls and stuff, the success of that kind of harder game, I think people like it. I mean,
this is harder than Dark Souls.
I know, but I mean, just I think in general, people are appreciating that,
I hope so. I hope we're moving towards that as a gaming culture. I don't know if we're there yet.
I don't know. That's a little deeper than this review needs to go, but I think that people are not everybody. Obviously, not everybody is going to enjoy every game, but I feel like in general, when you're tested a little bit more, then I feel like you're invested more in the game.
Yeah, this is not a game where like how that term popcorn movie is thrown around where it's like, oh, you just sit back and relax. This is not a game where you're going to sit back and relax.
No, you're going to be paying attention.
You need to be paying attention all the time. It's turn-based. But, another element we should talk about is there's a torch dynamic, right? So every time you go through the dungeon, there's a torch that kind of goes out slowly, depending on what you do. And as the torch goes lower, the critical hit chances go higher for your group and for enemies. The loot, like the quality of the loot goes higher, but they get stressed out way more easily, and your party can get surprised, which again screws up your whole party composition. So they have this great risk-reward thing throughout the whole game, which is a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah, no, I've tried one of my last dungeon runs, because you can also equip them so that when they have on gear, that when the torch is low, then they crit even more than they would if the torch is low.
Yeah.
So I tried kind of running one of those groups, and I thought they're critting so much that it almost weighed out the bad and the good, because they'd crit enough that they get all happy and kind of de-stress a little bit each time. And I actually saw that as a tip that somebody said, is to try it, running with the torch out or almost all the way out.
Which is terrifying.
It is terrifying. It's fun to play around, you know what I mean? That's going into a dungeon and doing that kind of run and having those guys and then bringing in a different group for...
That would just remind me, this is also a game where you really want to experiment, because you always want to kind of push your guys farther. Kind of knowing that's maybe not the best idea, but you want to see what's going to happen, which from what I understand is also very Lovecraft. It's kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit. So you told me about a time where you lit a little torch and you went and fought like this ridiculously hard Shambler monster. I think that was pretty early on in the game. And just got wiped.
That was ridiculous. It was like, so as you're going through, you interact with different chests, or sometimes it'll be like an altar, And I was like, let's see what this altar does. And, let my guys open it up. And all of a sudden it summoned this huge boss guy. And it wiped my party before I knew how to run away. And
yeah. But even running away is not guaranteed. So if you're in a battle, there's, again, a chance that you won't run away.
But as soon as that boss spawned, I would have been like, oh, I'm not ready for this at all, and would have ran away, but I didn't know how. So he wiped me out. But it was kind of cool, and I've never messed with one of those things again, actually.
Well, no, and I've always wanted to. I'm just, again, it scares me. Mm-hmm. But speaking of running away, there's always, if you're not in a battle, there is the bailout option, and that you need to do. That's really, to get through this game, you've got to learn when to retreat and when to keep going. And it's a fine line. But so what happens is if you retreat from a dungeon, you'll get experience, but you keep all the treasure.
Yeah, and they get stressed out when you retreat, right? They get 20 stress added to them.
Which is significant.
Yeah, so if they're all at the edge, they can actually push them over the edge to the heart attack, right, as you retreat. So they just basically, we're running away and then just die.
So if you wipe, as we've experienced, you lose everything.
Yeah, so all your treasure's gone.
No experience, no nothing. Devastating.
Of course, all your stuff in town is all your guys back in town are there,
okay.
So it's no game over. But you lost your last hour of play. At least.
And also we should have mentioned this earlier, but real quick, if you guys hit the middle stress area, you can get virtues like you said, or you can get these long-lasting effects like negative quirks that stay with the character forever, and they can be pretty harsh. You can also get diseases, which you kind of have to take care of because they debuff your character. So there's all this micromanaging, which again, micromanaging. But in this game, it's really fun. It's that constant, like I said, you really have to balance your heroes, plan things out. You can't just click on all the things and go into a dungeon thinking like you're going to win.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of thought and a lot of execution.
Yeah, because each character can have up to 6 skills. You can
4
is what you take at a time.
That you bring in, yeah.
Yeah, but they have 6 or 7 total that you choose from, right?
It's 8 actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because with the Abomination, who's like this guy who transforms into like this werewolf thing, he has all 8, but only depending on where he is do certain ones work.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you choose which skills you want to take, and so you can have 2 plague doctors. One works really well with this jester, and one works really well with the thief guy. And so I think making my parties work together is probably my favorite part of that game. Is of getting that little perfect group so that where they are in the party is maximized, and they're working together and helping each other out. That's definitely.
Oh, it feels so good when that comes together, and it's so devastating when they break that apart.
Yeah.
And there's other things like there's bleed, which is like damage over time. And there's plague or blight damage, which is again a similar. And you look at it and go, "What's the same thing? Just they named it something different." But again, they did it to a point where it doesn't feel just tacked on or extemporaneous. It's just here it is, and you've got to manage these things. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I really want to say go out and play this game to everybody. I would say do that. I would always put the disclaimer that beware what you're getting into. One, it's incredibly addictive. Like, I don't want to play anything else but that game right now. Which is, for what we're doing, not all that productive. Fun, not all that productive. And 2, it's very serious. You got to pay attention, and you got to realize that it's okay to fail, because you're going to do that a lot. That's just part of it.
Yeah.
So...
I'm going to disagree a little bit and say everybody go get this game. I think
really?
If you've listened to this and you're at all, your interest is piqued, then yes, go get the game.
Well, I want people to play games like this, again, because I want to encourage that sort of like, these very indie games that are crowdfunded. It's probably just one or 2 people's vision of a game, and it's awesome. And we're seeing more and more of these games, which is great. So I would give this, probably so far, honestly, it would be my game of the year for 2016. We're in 2017 now. But for the last year, that's probably up there. Maybe even over Civ 6, honestly. Civ 6.
It's always hard to pick a game. But, it was definitely one of those games where within 15 minutes, I was like, oh, I'm going to be playing this for a while.
That's the thing, too, is right when you start, it's like, it's like you can feel it when you start playing a game. Like the opposite of Space Hulk, which we reviewed last time, where you're like, oh, this game is terrible, and I know it. This was one of those games where it's like, this is a damn good game. You can just tell. It just oozes that sort of creativity and, and I don't know. Just it has it. Whatever it is, it has it.
That's what I'm saying. Everybody play it. If you're listening now, play it. Go play it.
If you're to have your heart broken, it'll happen. Yeah. So one, we're freezing, which is why we're wearing these really, really bulky pieces of clothing. We're in
Vermont,
like
-3
it's
outside.
So cold. So that's why. If you're wondering, why are they wearing like suits of armor and stuff? Well, one, it's cool. actually it's warm, but it's cool looking. And yeah, I recently, right before we did this review, I foolishly played the game because I can't stop playing it, and I lost the boss battle, and it was tough. I'm still hurt a little bit from that. But no, that said, I want to play it more, which when you have your heart broken in a game that severely, let me tell you folks, oof, it hurts real bad. I still want to go in and play it again. And I can't, that's probably the highest praise I can give to something, honestly. Because there's been other games where I've got pissed. I'm like, I'm never playing that game again.
Yeah, just done. Rage quit.
Yeah. Okay,
Sure.
so final verdict. Bree, would you recommend Darkest Dungeon?
I think absolutely. Yeah, I love this game. It's great.
Yeah, me too. Awesome game, one of the better games I've played in a long, long time. Addicting as hell, but game, you test me. Anyway, thanks for watching. Tune in next time for another Atomic Facepalm played in full. If you like this video, do us a favor and subscribe. We would really
Thumbs up,
appreciate
maybe?
that. Yeah. We have our Twitter information on the YouTube channel, which you're hopefully on right now. So yeah, tune in next time for Played in Full. Good luck. Have fun.